Okay, so um, we're talking a little bit about what we call Talmidei Chachamim Sheikdichu Tavshilam Barabim, which is we titled it Rogue Scholars, but I want to just give a little bit of Akdama before we even talk on the next person, and ultimately we're gonna get to Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh of Modena, which is not going to start not till the end of the class or maybe next time, but I wanna be makdim with a pshat that I have in a Gemara. It's not necessarily the emes, but it's a pshat that I would like to say as a setting to our discussion tonight. The Mishnah in Chelek tells us that Arboed Yoitis v'shloishim malachim ein lam Chelek lo'olam haba. We know everybody is born with their birthright, which is a Chelek lo'olam haba. Kol Yisrael yesh lam Chelek lo'olam haba ve'elu she'ein lam Chelek, and people have the ability to lose their portion in the world to come. But here, the Mishnah gives us a list of four great hedyotis in the sense that they weren't malachim, and the shloisha malachim that lost their chelek lo'olam haba. The malachim, the kings, are famous Achav, Menashe, and Yerovam. Each one lost his chelek for different reasons, but primarily they were evil people. The Gemara brings down in Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Beis that Rav Ashi, one night before closing his shir, he says, L'mocha nidreish b'chavireinu. Tomorrow, he said excitedly, we're going to discuss our friends. Our friends was a euphemism for a certain diminution of the status of these individuals. He was referring to the shloisha malachim she'en lam chelek lo'olam haba. So it says that night, it says Osa Menashe ischazile b'chilmei. Menashe appeared in a dream, and he visited Rav Ashi. Menashe was offended by this term. He visited Rav Ashi and he says, Chavroch v'chavra davuch kareslan. You refer to me as your friend and your father's friend. Well, we're really friends, you think? We're on the same level? He says, let me ask you a simple question. And it's interesting, I didn't look it up recently, but I once saw that the Gemara says, Hai man de boy lemehevi chasida. It's a Gemara Baba Kama. If somebody wants to be a chassid, he should learn mili de brachas. He should learn hilchas brachas. Rav Ashi was sort of saying, I'm a chassid, and these people foolishly lost their olam haba. So Menashe comes and asks him something in hilchas brachas. Menashe asks him something in hilchas brachas. He says, Meheche bois lemishrei hamoitzi. Where do you break bread when you make hamoitzi? What part is the most mechubed? Now there's many perushim in what the shaila is and what the answer is, but I'm just going to say a simple without the machlokes. But what area of the bread, this Gemara actually makes it to Shulchan Aruch in Hilchas Brachas, Kuf Samach Zayin. But what part of the bread do you break in order to be mechabed the bread? So Amalei in the Cholim, he says, Lo Yedana, I don't know. So he says, Amalei meichad the boys the mishra hamoitzi legemiris. You don't even know aleph beis. You don't know where to break bread for hamoitzi. And the chavrach korislan bizu bizyonis. You call me your friend? I'm your friend. What shaychus do you have to me being your friend? You don't know where to make hamoitzi from? Amalei Rav Ashi is still Rav Ashi, even in the middle of the cholim. He says, Agmarali, teach it to me. Ulemacha darishnale mishmech bepirka, and tomorrow I'll say it over in your name. I'll say I had a cholim. I learned from Menashe how to make hamoitzi. Teach it to me right now. Amalei, he says, mehecha dekodem bishula. He says, you make hamoitzi. Now I'm going to say one of the pshatim, and this makes it to Shulchan Aruch. You make hamoitzi not from the bottom of the bread, which gets very baked, not from the top, which gets lighter, but is a more, I would say, respectable spot. You do it from the middle. You bridge the top and the bottom. Right from the middle, you bridge the top and the bottom, and that's how you make hamoitzi. And Kaloima, I think what Menashe might have been trying to tell Rav Ashi was, Herzachayim, it's easy to sit now as a Monday morning quarterback and evaluate the stupidities and the things that the Deiros HaKadmonim were involved in. It's easy today to come and say the founding fathers were racists and we should pull down their monuments, but it's ridiculous. You have to understand you're built on them. You're built on the evolving society and a society that learns right from wrong through trial and error. You would not be at all the person you are today if not for us. Menashe was telling this to Rav Ashi. He was saying, you are only Rav Ashi because of the nisyonis and because of the fashlas, the falls, the nephilas that I had. What are you coming over here and you're calling me your friend? You don't know half the halacha I know. Even a basic din that you do every day, I'm showing you don't know. How's it shaykh for you to call me your friend? And Rav Ashi is moided to him. And in fact, he tells him, he says, L'mocha nidrish b'chavereinu, b'rabbiseinu. He calls Menashe, who the Mishnah clearly says, Ein lechelek lo'elam haba. Rav Ashi knows the Mishnah. He refers to him now as Rabbi Seinu. He refers to him as a Rebbe. Why? At Mechaiske learned. He taught me something. And it's an amazing teaching over here. That means we could look at the Deres HaKadmonim, who Taka fell and had you read this and had terrible nephilas, and we don't evaluate them. We don't have a right to evaluate them. We have a right to learn from them. We have a right to use them as a teaching. We could hoist them up and say what to do or not to do. But to talk about them as people and to say bad person, good person, here Menashe is teaching Rav Ashi that we don't. And Menashe says to him, Rav Ashi says to Menashe in the dream, he says, Ma'achad dechakmisu kulahai. You're so wise. Why did you worship Avodah Zarah? He tells him something so important. He says, he says, and I use the gears of the Yad Ramah. Ihavis, if you were there, Nikitas shipule glimach beshinach. You would have picked up the bottom of your garment with your teeth, verahatis acharai, abasroi, and you would have run after me. You wouldn't have even, I allowed myself to trip over my long robes, knowing that I was doing Yisurim and I was going to Avodah Zarah. You would pick it up, let your feet run freely. You'd have the ease and the flow of a good runner to get to the destination of Avera very quickly. Don't evaluate us. You don't know. So he was trying to tell him like this also. The top of the bread, here it is, the top of the bread is the new dur, the very fresh, clean dur. The bottom of the bread is the old dur, burnt, crusty, took in the fire, allows the top to be what it is. The top is not the right place and the bottom is not the right place. The right place is the middle that bridges the top and the bottom. The right place is the center that understands the Mesiras Nefesh and the Akrovis of the old Dur, and also recognizes the ability and the Frischkeit and the newness of the new Dur. That's the way B'tzias HaPas symbolizes life, and B'tzias HaPas symbolizes respect for the old and appreciation for the new. Okay, so B'oifen Sheyetzalanu, that this too is what I want to say now, when we're going to sit and evaluate different machabrim. One of them is Yehuda di Modina, who I could tell you very clearly from seeing the posture of many great Gedolim, the misyachestim with a little bit of a zilzul. So I know that I'm not doing something that I didn't see, but still it has to be done with a certain reverence, with a certain appreciation, that whatever the nisyonis he went through and whatever it was that he had to glide through in his life, it's free for us to learn from it, but not to evaluate him as good, bad. We're not going to brand. I want to start like this. I want to explain that it's very rare in our history to find autobiographical Gedolim. Gedolim do not write biographies about themselves. Ein oisem matzevis devreim hein hen zechroinum. We understand that. We don't make these big matzevis and big statements. And the understanding is that just like we as people strip the DNA out of a Rashba, out of a Ritva, out of a Rabbi Kiva Eger, we understand there's no DNA there. It's just Torah, the Messiahs of Torah. They also approached it like that. It had nothing. Who cared about their life? Why was there issues b'chlal of relevance? And Gedolim b'derech klal did not write autobiographical material. It's true there is a Magal Toy from the Chidah. It's true there is a Megillah Sefer from a Yavitz. And it's true there is a Chaya Yehuda from Yehuda di Modina. It's true there's a Sefer Chazyanis from Rav Chaim Vital. And it's true that there's a book published by Mosader of Cook from the Aderes. And I forgot what the name of it is, but it's also an autobiography. I wrote it down. Oh, Seder Eliyahu. It's true that there are, and in the era of Kabbalah, when before the Arizal's Kabbalah, there was the Sefer HaMeshiv, there was the Sefer Gerushim from Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, there was the Sefer Mila Deshmaya from Rabbi Elazar Azkari, all these, and the Magid Mesharim from the Beis Yosef. Here, pretty much is the brief list. What?
Kamarna.
Yeah, well, the Megillah Storm from Rabbi Isla of Kamarna. Those are the few I will discuss. All these broad ones, I could say Kemat, the Yotzei Doifen. There was a Mevukash over there. A little bit tonight we'll talk about the Sefer Chezyonis. But B'derach Klal, Gedolim, Rabbonim, did not write Svarim about themselves. Right now in the list that we gave is pretty much everybody that ever wrote autobiographical work. Again, the Chassam Sofer did write something about Pressburg. There were Megillas Avos that were written by the Taisus Yontif. There was Yevain Metzula. There were, again, different, I would say, recordings of tragedy, but it's a handful. We have hundreds of thousands of Svarim, and it's a handful of autobiographical work that one could point to. Okay. Gedolim do write what I would say more like a carbon toida. They do write, there is a tremendous amount of drippings of different information about the different tragedy and travails that the Adam Gadol did go through and what caused him and propelled him to write the Sefer that he's writing. And I want to give a few examples of that. And that has a tremendous chashivas. Gedolim do write that. One Sefer, interestingly, is a Sefer. I want to just bring about 4 or 5 Svarim where you find the Mechabrim, Gedolei Olam, great people did drip autobiographical information, but mostly with the agenda of what propelled them to write, their work. One such individual is a Sefer around the Levush. There's a Sefer written by Reb Shmuel ben Azriel Milansburg, and he was a Rav in Shtorim, and he wrote a Sefer called Chagura Shmuel. Those that learn Yeridea will come across, sometimes the Badei HaShulchan brings down the Chagura Shmuel. It's a good Sefer. It's a Sefer that's mostly Kor Halacha, and it's used in Yeridea, the Chagura Shmuel. But before he wrote the Chagura Shmuel, he also wrote the Amudei Olam. He wrote an interesting sefer called Amudei Olam, and he wrote it in Tavkuf Aleph, which is 1741. And I want to just, it's a sad and almost harrowing Hakdama. I'll read a little bit of it because it's hard for me to read. But he writes, Omar Shmuel ben Hadarshan Hagadol Reb Azriel Zatzal. He says, Hine golu yu mefursum lekoil me'alilas sheker asher isoirer b'avoyneseinu arabim b'kilas Poznan hamatira be'erev Rosh Hashanah b'shnas Tov Tzadik Vov. So in Tov Tzadik Vov, in the Polish town of Poznan, there was a terrible blood libel. I'll transliterate. A non-covenantal baby was found about a half a mile from the city, and the people that found him, he was dead. They stabbed him, and they made his body look like a sieve. And then they agitated and got everybody motivated to say that we, the Jews, did this, and it was for some of our holiday needs. Again, this is Rosh Hashanah, not likely for matzahs. The police and the constabulary came to the Jewish ghetto, to the Jewish street, and they took the Rav, who I don't know who he was, but this was Rabbi Agadol HaKodesh Rabbi Aryeh Leib Mipozna Zeichet Tzadik V'Kodesh Levrocha, and the Shtadlan, the richest man in the area, whose name was Rabbi Yankel Shtadlan, and 2 other individuals. They called the Inquisitioner down to come and interrogate them. The first thing they did was they shaved them from head to toe, because it was clear to them, the enlightened constabulary of Pozna, that with hair, Jews could do witchcraft and they could evade and avoid any possibility of being discovered. They were going to torture these individuals till they would admit to the conspiracy of killing Gentile children for the sake of getting sacramental blood. The Rav asked, he said, whatever you're going to put me through, whatever torture, they were going to hang him upside down and by chains. It's a horrible thing, a description that's terrible. He ends up dying from this torture. He says, torture me an extra half hour, but leave my beard alone. I want to meet my maker with my beard. They wouldn't accept that. They wouldn't listen to that. And he was given an extra half hour to do tshuva. He knew that he wouldn't be able to do tshuva afterwards, and the chanina and the chesed of the shoita gave him a half hour to do tshuva, and then the torture was inhuman. It was brutal, and he unfortunately succumbed. And so did the Shtadlan. He also succumbed. And so did the two other Jews of note. They also succumbed to this. And the Inquisition kept going, and he ordered the arrest of many more. And at that point, the Balabatim realized that Tachas Dosam Lahamis, and they escaped. Most of the Balabatim left the city of Pozna. Rav Shmuel, the Chagura Shmuel, Rav Shmuel Bar Azriel Landsberg says, I was there. When I tried to escape, they stopped me at the border. I had to give them a tremendous amount of money, everything I had, to allow myself to escape. He says, 30 days after the death of these great leaders of our community, the Rav, the Parnas, and the other dignitaries, the Inquisitioner was passing over a bridge, a small bridge. It made absolutely no sense. He fell off the bridge and he died in the most horrible death. He drowned, his head was hit on rocks. It's not clear what happened, but he says, V'a'am shakta ve'yoreya. Everybody around somehow got quiet, and they got b'tchila shakta v'achakach yoreya. It took time. First there was quiet, then there was yira. The understanding is that zem zachzuge chepet with holy people, and the holy people are coming out, and they're going to avenge their death from another world, a more capable world. It took a little time, and all the other people who were alleged co-conspirators in this horrible blood libel were eventually released. And he says, and therefore, he says, I decided to write this sefer, and I called it Amudei Olam, even though it has 3 Amudim, but Amudei Olam connotes in his mind the memory of 2 greatest people that he knows, this Rav Aryeh Leib, the Rav of Pozna, and Rav Yankel Shtadlan, the tremendous president of the Kehillah of Pozna. So the Akdam, and he writes in the Sharblat, he says, Amudei Olam, Shechiber Harav Agoin Agodl, he writes this about himself, it's interesting. Shechiber Harav Agodl Amufla Shmuel Abdak de Kehillas Shtorim, Ben Arav Adarshan Reb Azriel Zatzal Milansburg, Uchibur Noah v'Nechmod Shavi L'chol Nefesh, V'Sibas Ha'esoirus Achibur Azeh, Mishpat HaSefer Ma'aseu, Yimotze Ba'Akdama Ba'arichus. Okay, so to me, this is a sefer. It's not autobiographical at all, but the desire of the individual is to explain what pushed him to, and lots of Mechabrim did write what I would call biographical information. I want to spend a little time on the Ber HaGoyla, even though we talked about him peripherally. I think his Akdama is a very valuable Akdama, and it's not published in any of the Shulchan Aruchs because all they do is they publish with brevity just his intended design and what he did in his structure of Ber HaGoyla, but nobody writes exactly why he eventually why he printed and published the Ber HaGoyla, what exactly propelled him to do that, and that's a very interesting Hakdama. Just you need a little bit of a background. You have to know that in the Cossacks, Bogdan Chmelyanitsky, Yemach Shemoy V'Zichroi, in Tov Ches, which was in the 1648, Tov Tes, 1649, went across large swaths of the Ukraine and killed brutally 300,000 Jews in the most brutal of fashions. It's not for nothing he's up there with Hitler and with Lavan and Haman. He was one of the biggest anti-Semites. He became a very big political force, and he was very strongly anti-Polish. He leaned on the Russian Tsar, and in 1654, he wanted to confederate himself with the Russian Tsar to break the Polish Commonwealth. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had a very large area, lucrative, lots of Jewish people lived there. Vilna was Poland at that point. He wanted to break that Commonwealth. And that started in 1654 to 1667 was the 13-year war between Russia and Poland, which ended up in a stalemate. Lots of soldiers died, nothing was accomplished, nothing was broken. Eventually it bankrupted Poland, and it made Poland much weaker for the rest of the Dairis. We know the ishtalshalis of the weakening of Poland to the state that it is today. Now, the interesting thing is that in the middle of the Russia-Polish war, Sweden, which is a highland country, comes down with an interest in fighting Poland and taking Vilnius away. They wanted the Duchy of Vilnius. It was understood that it was original Sweden's neches, and Sweden and Russia had a milchama from the 12th century, and Sweden was always interested in fighting the Russian. So Sweden comes in the year 1655 to make war against the Polish and to take away Vilnius. At this point, what happens is the Truce of Vilnius, the Treaty of Vilnius. And this is where Russia and Poland decide, in the middle of the 13-year war, we're going to make an armistice, we're going to put down our weapons, and for 2-3 years, until we could get rid of the Swedes, we don't fight. After that, we start fighting again. Only a Russian and a Pole could do this. After that, we'll start fighting again. Let's not fight to get rid of our common enemy, and then we'll fight again. So for those years, the Russian battles the Swede. And this is in Shnas 1656, when the Beragoyla is escaping Vilna, because Vilna is not safe. The Russian on one side and the Swede on the other side. And he hates the Russian because you have to understand they're Polish. So the Beragoyla writes with tremendous sin against the Russian. And he writes like this. He says, Sholev hayisi bebeisi veranan behecholi. Now again, this Hagdama is not found in any of the Sfarim because they excerpted. It's a 5-page Hagdama, and it's in the Taf Chav Beis Shulchan Aruch, the Amsterdam Shulchan Aruch, which is the first time the Beragoyla comes out. And he writes like this. He says, I was living in tremendous peace, veranan behecholi. Toiv mi bonim ubonis. I had lots of children, hamahat me'arbe, only some that survived. You have to understand, infant mortality was very prevalent in those days, and not lots of kids did not make it to adulthood. Toiv mi bonim ubonis hamahat me'arbe asher nisharu b'chaim li. Una orai oimdim l'ragli. I had young people standing by my feet. I had kviyasitim l'Torah. I said shiurim. A person's biggest desire is to say shiurim. Oisei ra'isi toiv b'chol amoli. He says, v'hinei hamalachim noyadu, avru nisabru evra v'zam lehilochem. V'govra yad ha'oyev sar yovan hamoskaviter. He calls him a Greek. The Russians were always heirs to Byzantium. Their understanding was that they're the real Byzantine. And he calls him the Greek, the Muscovite, overpowered. This time, it was true. At this point, Vilna was in the hand of the Russians. He says, and I sent my family packing, my children, my wife, I sent them. He sends them towards Amsterdam. That's where he feels they're going to find some menuch. He says, but I stayed. I wasn't so convinced of the danger. And you know what? A leader stays with his ship. He was a Rav. He was a Rav in Vilna. By the way, the Beragoyla, Moshe Ravkash, is the great-great-grandfather of the Vilna Gaon. A great Poisik. He says, and then I realized that I made an error because the armies were closing in on both sides, and soon escape would be impossible. So he says, at that point, I had to leave everything that I had. All my nechasim, I had zvachim and menachas that I had from a Yerusha, from my forefathers. I worked very hard on being magia, zvachim and menachas kayedua, have lots of girsa problems. He says, I worked very hard on being magia them. I wasn't able to take it with me. It was a tragedy. It was lost and never found. He says, what I was able to take was my tefillin, and realizing that I might be going into an eretz tzia v'tzalmovis, and I'll never know when Shabbos and Yom Tov is, I took a Sefer Evroinus, which is a calendar, something that would help me determine when Shabbos Yom Tov is, and that would be the only thing that he had. He says, as the Rabbi Shalom helped, he was able to get to the port, and he was able to take a ship. He says the Swedes caught him, and whatever clothes or items he did have, they stripped from him. He says the Russians harassed him. Finally, he gets to Amsterdam, and there he meets two of the greatest people. One was Reb Shaul Mortara. This was the Rebbe of Spinoza. He was great, interesting in the Sefer Oyel Yankiv from Reb Yankiv Sasportas. there's a big vikuach between Rabbi Yankov Sasportas and Reb Shaul Mortara. He was an interesting intellectual. He wrote the Sefer Givas Shaul on Chumash. He's a person of great note from that time, and the Ber HaGoyla is made on him that he was a Gadol Atzum. And he met Rav Yitzchak Abuav. This is Rav Yitzchak Abuav Ashlishi. He says they took him in and opened their houses, the Kovet Gadol. They took care of all the plitim that came from Vilna. He says, and the expenses they took care of all the expenses, and then they sent some people to Frankfurt because there were people that were opening up their houses to the Frankfurt, to the plitim there. He says, all the Anshe Amenu treated us so well. He says, and I stayed there, and recognizing that I was a shtickle Talmud Chacham, they gave me a shir, and slowly I started becoming known to them. And then he says, Ephraim Boyeno and Yaakov Castillo, these are the printers of Amsterdam. They were looking to print a Shulchan Aruch without mistakes, but they wanted to include a novel idea. They wanted Mara Mekaymis. The Beis Yosef Kayadua writes without Mara Mekaymis. Anybody that wants to see an original Shulchan Aruch, here's an original Shulchan Aruch. This is the first print. There's not one Mara Mokum, no Agos, Ramah. This is how the Beis Yosef was printed. And you could see it's from...
it's a little bit larger than pocket size, no?
Yeah, this is not the pocket size. This is the first print. Beis Yosef. Here's the Sharblat. It's a Yeridea. You could see it's Yosef ben Ephraim Nerayor v'Yizrach. This was printed in Shin Chaf Hey in Venice by Alvise Bragadin. And this over here had no Mara Mekaymis. If anybody wanted Mara Mekaymis, and there are some Shulchan Aruchs that have Mara Mekaymis, those were the people that were learning them, that would go to the Beis Yosef, and they would take from the Beis Yosef and figure out which Mara Mokum the Beis Yosef meant and which Mara Mokum the Beis Yosef wanted. Kayadua, when the Ramah wrote his Agos, he also did not have Mara Mekaymis. It didn't happen till Shnas Shin Samach Zayin, where that's 1607, where the Ramah's nephew started being Magia and started putting Agos on the Ramah, but not on the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef was never Zoicha to have Mara Mekaymis, explaining where he called his halacha from until the Ber HaGoyla came. The Ber HaGoyla was the first. Everybody had to write an initial and put on the sides of their Shulchan Aruch, and the Ber HaGoyla writes, he says, eventually I was able to obtain the copy that was an heirloom in my family, which was the Ber HaGoyla, the Shulchan Aruch that my father owned, which had the Agos of the yeshiva of the Prisha. My father was a Talmud of the Prisha, and those Agos were there, and those were the ones I used for Mara Mekaymis also. But he says, I didn't want to do this job. When Boyeno and Castillo asked me to do this job, I didn't want to do it. It's a tremendous job, chipus mechipus, to sit and put down my shiurim, tmidim kesidron. He said, but I had such a karas hatov to them. They took me in. People were nice to me. They're asking me for something. It makes sense. The Welt needs it. I put everything down. I burnt the midnight oil. I worked on it. I said, I barely put any chidushim, a little bit of chidushim, and those that know, there's a handful of chidushim where the Ber HaGoyla comes with his own. Imagine how hard it is when you know your job is just to put Mara Mekaymis, and you'd love to be Mechadish. Ber HaGoyla was a Gedolim Merab and Shmoi. He'd love to be Mechadish. And it's barely a few chidushim. We know the one in Hilchos Chadash, we know the one in Geneva, we know a few chidushim that the Ber HaGoyla sticks in. He says, and wherever I say Lani use Daiti Nira, I'm very careful to make sure it's my own. And he tells us exactly his system that he uses. It's a 5-page Hakdama, and all the Mechabrei Shulchan Aruch just bring down the last bit where he explains why he called it, what the value of the Sefer, the 6 values to this Sefer. Calling it Be'er HaGoyla, he says, Shekarisi Ba'afrei Zov, B'chibur HaGodol Shechibur HaGoyim Beis Yosef, and that it was B'yosi B'galusi B'Amsterdam. Most people think it's a Be'er HaGoyla, it's Megale, like in the Knesset Yecheskel, when he has his Mafteches, he says, V'ata Aseilecha Klei Goyla. He borrows euphemistically from a pasuk in Yecheskel, Klei Goyla, which is a double entendre, it means to be Megale. But here he says, I clearly mean Goyla. I did it B'galusi. It was a hakaras hatov. It was an ode and a gesture to the people of Amsterdam for them taking me in with such chesed, and it's an amazing thing. Yeah, it's very revealing. Also, A few years late, we all know we spoke about the Ma'orei Naim and the fact that the first chelik of his sefer, which he breaks his sefer down into 3 chalakim. One is Koila Lekim, which is about the earthquake in Ferrera in 1570, and the other is Hadras Ekenim. It's a translation of some old apocryphal work. And the last one that got him in trouble was the Imre Bina, which is his Pirushim and his understanding in Agodas of Chazal, which the Maral did not like and others didn't like. Now, but the first chelik is Koila Lekim. That's also a Mizmar L'Soida. That's Akar Satoiv to the saving of the Jewish community. Only 170 people were killed in that earthquake. Could have been something much more devastating. And it's a Mizmar L'Soida about the fact that an earthquake in Ferrera that should have leveled everything and everybody didn't. That's a nice thing. The Pnei Yeshua, we all know, wrote in his Akdama, the reason he's being Mechaber a Sefer and he's putting it out to print is because of the great fire that almost consumed everything and everybody, and he was saved and spared, and that's why he decided while he was under the rubble that he would prepare a Sefer Litfus if he'd get out. But interesting to me, amongst the list of the people that were in trouble is the Emunah Shmuel, the Berachas HaZevach, Rabbi Aaron Shmuel Keidenhofer, the father of the Kava Yosher. That's much more popular of a sefer, even though his father was Gadol Hador. But he writes, this is a sefer that was published in I think it's Shin Chof, it's Tav Choftes. I'm sorry, but he writes in his Akdama something so sad. He writes like this. He says, and he's in Tovches in 1648. He was part of the casualties of Bogdan Chmielnicki, Yamach Shemoy V'Zichra. He says, Asher noga bi yad Hashem umeatzores rabbis asher sovivuni kitruni hidrichuni v'dorach bi ha'oyev keshes trucha. He says, Vayasimeni kamatar lachetz. He was very devastated. Look what happened to him. He says, I was in the city of Chorev. I don't know where that is exactly. He says, and there, V'sham nilkach me'iti machmad einai. He says, Kaspi, Zahavi, Ma'oidi, my money. But then he says, Yelidai Beisi, the children. He says, Shtei benoisai aktanis, shenergo al kiddush Hashem. Eretz al tichsi damam. He says, my 2 daughters, and they were killed in front of him, supposedly. He had his son, Reb Tzvi Hirsch, who was the Kavayosh. He says, Gam kol kisvei hakodesh sheli, shechibarti al kama shitas betalmud, v'apoiskim asher kibalti meraboisei hakdoshim. He says, all my svarim nilkach me'iti al yedei Yevanim ha'arurim. Again, Yevanim does not mean the Greeks. The Greeks were not a country or a people of any consequence till the late 1700s. They were nobodies. So the Yevanim over here are the heirs to Byzantium, and that's the Russians and the Kazakhs. He says, V'oz amarti b'chavzi nigrazti. I think he means nigzarti meretz achayim, but it says nigrazti. Lo yerek ka. He was hurt. Both his legs were broken. He says many times he was taken out to be killed. He says, Pashatati is Savari, Kitzayin Latevach, Vashem Beracham of Hoisir Hoisi Liyaisar Dupolit, Nisonani Lefleita Gedola, Lahachis is Bonai, Vitaflai, the Tolubi, Vayatzileni Mechera Vayoina. He says, and I made up that Arba Tzrichim Lahoidis. And it was important to me that if I ever get out of this, I should be able to write a chibur to thank the Rabbi Shalom. And he does. He goes on to write the Berachas HaZevach, the Emunah Shmuel, and eventually the Tiferet Shmuel. I'm not sure if one of them was written beforehand. But these are all, I would say, not biographical in nature. Nothing over here is biographical. What is over here is the Mechaber is explaining with a tremendous amkus what pushed him to be Mechaber the Sfarim? What pushed him to give it out? And he's saying it's all a carbon taida. Most of these Mechaberim you could qualify and classify in the group of Mizmar L'Toida. Before I go to biographies, and I want to just mention there's one sefer which was always very interesting to me. This is a Rav that lived in the 50s. Rav Moshe gave him a askama on his sefer. His name was Reb Eliyahu Rosov, and the biographical entry that he has in his sefer is very unique. It's very interesting to me. He was mechaber about 5 or maybe 6 Sfarim. They all have the name Eliyahu. They're all thin Sfarim with nice shtiklach Torah. Some of them are yeshivish, some of them are halachic. They're rather some nice chidushim here and there. I think Rav Moshe enjoys some of the Sfarim and is mefalpel with him a little bit. Rav Moshe had an eye for him, a nice eye for him. Now, he writes a sefer, Ugas Eliyahu, Kisei Eliyahu, Yad Eliyahu, Minchas Eliyahu, some other Eliyahus. And I think in the front of all the Sfarim that were written after Tafshin Tezayin, after 1957, right? So he writes like this, he says, Zeh sholish shonim shenosati b'mesilas habarzel. It's already 3 years that I rode in the Mesilas habarzel. He explains it in brackets, subway. V'yoshvu lenegdi shnei arelim. And 2 non-Jews were sitting near me. V'sichku al hapeyes v'azoken sheli. And they were harassing me, making fun of my beard and my payas. Apparently he had payas. Kasher komu lotzes, when they got up to walk off the subway, this is a Lower East Side subway, shomat echad mehem ha-mishnayis miyadi, one of them took away the mishnayis that I was holding, vehika ba-mishnayis al roishi, he hit me on the head with the Mishnah. Hakor gedolat shenafalti la'oretz. He hit me hard. I fell. He says, it looks like he got knocked out. He says, Anoshim chordu mimkoimam. Many people got very shaken. Achem yotzu. But the offenders ran out. V'tekef niskar adelis. The doors closed. V'yisi choyle lo yoleinu zman rav. I was sick for a long time. He's writing this after 3 years. Shoyoli ke'ev aroish. Ume'oz, he says, from that episode, nechlash koyach hazikoron, I have no memory, or my memory is weakened. Ad shem yishaleni afilu she'ela ktana, ani mevakesh lahamtin kama regoyim, ad shani ma'ayim bisfarim. If you ask me a small question, I asked to wait a little bit so I could look into the book. He says, Ki shochachti kol ma shelamadati. It's so tragic. He says, I forgot everything I learned. Because safti oz shani koisev zois lemandas. And he says, the reason I'm writing it, he writes it in the Sharblat. You see, it's here in the Sharblat. He says, the reason I'm writing it is, she'ein lismach ha'ma shekosafti besifri rak mi shenira lo'eze inyan ya'ayin heitev. Don't be saimach on me. If you see something in my sefer, be ma'ayin. Such an achrayis. It's an amazing individual to me. An achrayis, to show people, look, I'm writing, you see a shtikol Torah, you see a heter, you see something, don't be so alarmed. I don't remember anything. I'm writing the best I can. I'm doing the best I can. He obviously felt it was publishable, but still, he's worried that in halacha you have to be very careful. Very nice. Very nice. He says, look at the last 2 lines. I'm saying, Va'ata hura matzavi shechosh beroishi tamid v'rash b'moichi. He says, I have dry arteries in my head, something that I think a neurologist wouldn't say that today. Is that a picture of the arteries? I'm 78. Look, he didn't even have any allowance for the fact that he's aged. He's 78, so magia lacha to forget a little bit. No. Ani tefila l'Hashem shi'irapeh oisi v'yarach yom ha'vishnoisei b'toiv shuchalasik b'teira ki zeh kol cheftzi v'yizakeni la. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. I'm always so nisragish from this mechaber. And there's a number of svarim from him. There's at least 5 svarim, all with the name Eliyahu. And in some of them, Rav Moshe is mefalpel with him. Okay. Now, before we go to Modina, to Rabbi Yudari de Modina, I want to share with you like this. I want to tell you that, and with this I guess I'll close today because it's getting late, but in biographical works, and I saw somebody wrote Abarbanel, all true, those are again nichlal in the idea of Mizmor L'Toida. Everybody remembers that Abarbanel starts off like with the poem Shalev Hayisi Bebeisi Lizboina, and he talks about the Rash and the Zam also, it's true. Lemaisa, I want to say like this. The Sefer HaChezyonos is a very, very hard book to wrap your head around. If you ever read it, and the recent edition is from somebody named Mansour, I forgot his first name. I think it's Moshe Mansour. It's a very hard book to digest and a very hard book to wrap your head around it. There are many editions, but you should know that in 1951, Aaron Zev Eshkoili, somebody who dabbled in study of false messiahs, he wrote a very elaborate treatise on Mashiach Sheker. A lot of his work was used by Binyamin Shlomo Hamburger in his famous Sefer Mashiach Sheker Misnagdeim. So Aaron Zev Eshkoili put out Sefer HaChezyonis from Rav Chaim Vital in 1951. And that's a very complete and maybe you could even say reliable edition. He got manuscripts, other Sfarim, all the 12 editions that preceded him. Ostensibly, the Sefer was published by Rav Chaim Vital's grandson, and it has a tremendous amount of inflammatory things. It's mostly autobiographical, self-aggrandizing. It attempts to make Rav Chaim Vital the principal Talmud and Shiftein of what you would call Kabbalah Sari. It's a very hard thing to digest, and there is pointed Lashon Hara against three people that I know of. One was Rabbi Yaakov Abulafia, the son-in-law of the Maribei Rav, who made fun of Kabbalah, true, and who did not agree that the Arizal did any big moifsim, who tried constantly to be the rational force. This is all true. Amongst people, when they were peddling different Sipurei moifsim of the Arizal, he said, no, it's not true. And the Rachu, Rav Chaim Vital, was violently against him. I don't remember what page in Mansour's edition it is, but he was violently against him and had lots of things to say about him. One is that he was for 36 years he was nisgalgal in a behema before he came to this world, and that's why he's an animal, and he's misloitzitz like an animal. His worst bobs are reserved for Rabbi Yisrael Najara, the mechaber of the Kori Boin. Now, I want everybody to wait till I'm done. I have what to say over here. I'm not saying this over without a tailus. I'm going to explain. Rabbi Yisrael Najara to us is very choshuv, and we hold him in high regard. We sing his song every Shabbos. Yet in the Sefer HaChezyonis, which is also doubled up sometimes as the Shivchei Rav Chaim Vital, he's addressed as somebody that was over on Chilul Shabbos, Mishkav Zochar, gambling. He walked without a yarmulke. He was he ate dvar masurim. It's tisamar nasaras roish. Lishvacha yeyomer that Moshe Mansour, when he published his edition about 10 years ago, took out all the names. You'll never know who the names are. There's ... in all those editions, so you don't know if it's Najara, you don't know if it's Yaakov Abulafia, or you don't know if it's Rav Moshe Yoina from the Kamfei Yoina. But in each one of those, there's stories, full pages of stories that demean and discredit these individuals ad di yuta tachtoina, which always made it hard for me to believe that Chaysameh Shel Rav Chaim Vital was on this. So I have news for you. I want to say something. Rav Ruven Margolius, one of the biggest Goinim, passed away in 1971, was a Ger Chosid, I think a Talmud of Rav Me'arak, unfortunately died without children. He was the Safran, the librarian of the Sifriyat Rambam in Tel Aviv. He wrote, and it was because of him that you cannot find any editions of Rav Kook's 1951 Eshkoli version of the Sefer HaChezyonis. You cannot find it. The reason is because he said it's Lozus Vasayim, it's a Bizoyin Gedolim, and it's Sheker Muchlat. He proved it to be a sheker through syntax. He showed that the words used in the Sefer HaChezyonis were not words that were available in Rav Chaim Vital's time. I don't know where the article is. The Wikipedia article on the Sefer HaChezyonis does allude to it. I couldn't find the article, but I did have a copy of it once. I did have a copy of something quoted from it, but clearly this has been removed from all Mosada Rav Kook catalogs, all their shelves. You can't find it. Only in rare book collections or on auction can you find it, because of Rav Ruven Margolius' polemic against this. With this, we could start understanding Rav Ruven Margolius' tremendous antithesis and battle against Yehuda Aryeh de Modina. Because Rav Ruven Margolius was a Yid, an Altigu B'mshicha Yid, What's holy is holy. What's sacred is sacred. This Messiah of Kabbalah that came through the Arizal to Rav Chaim Vital can't be touched. This information is shifty at best, erroneous, or even slanderous at worst. And Rav Ruvain felt it has to be pulled. So even though Moshe Mansour felt that he should publish it, I think the Machon is called Shuvi Nafshi, if I remember correctly. And yeah, let me see. That's it. I've seen that. And if you look, I think somehow I remember page 70. I remember, you'll never find the names of these individuals. You'll find ... So L'shvocha,
thing is censored.
Right. So L'shvocha Yomer, he did the right thing. But Adif would have been if he wouldn't have printed it. There was no need to print it. But I'm just explaining. Next week, I want to work with Reuven Margolius' approach to Modena and explain Lama Heitev Charolai, why he was so angry at him. And part of it is the concept of Al Tigu B'Mshichai. Okay, we'll hold it here and we'll start Modena next week, Review Dari di Modena next week. Again, bearing in mind the Akdama that we said, which is that Meicha Dekoram Bishula, Meicha Bois Lemishrei Rifta, Meicha Dekoram Bishula. We have to be Mishal of the Deiris HaKadmoinim together with the Deiris HaTachtoinim and understand that we're built on them. Whether it's their contributions, whether it's their mistakes, or whether it's their paving of roads that we would have never had access to. We're built completely and totally on them. We have to understand that. So it's with that eye that we'll go to Chaye Yehuda next week. I would love to talk about the Megillah Sefer, which is Rav Yaakov Emden's autobiography, and at some point maybe we will. Everybody, I'm sure, is familiar with a book written by Rabbi Gestetner from Muncie, who's called it Megillah's Plaster, where he discredits the whole Megillah Sefer. It would be nice to discuss that and work with some of the information that he has. He's interestingly the son of Nosson Gestetner, but not Nosson Gestetner, who was the Gedolim in Eretz Yisrael. His father was Reb Nosson Gestetner, the Streimelmacher. So Amir Hashem will oit chazoin. Thank you all for joining. Have an easy fast and be matzliach.
Thank you. It's not accepted about